Welcome to Freeple of Earth. I'm your host, Rod Freeman. And this episode, we're going to talk about the defining moment of my life. Okay, well, I'll give you some background from, I've only got one other video I did, so this is my second one. But I mentioned that I grew up in a small port town in the northwest United States, in Puget Sound area. Now they call it the Salish Sea. The Indians called it the Wulge. But anyway, I'm getting off subject. I grew up and did kind of what I was expected to do. I was a Cub Scout, and I was going to be a Boy Scout, but then the older boys all beat me up right in front of the Scoutmasters. So I bagged that one. Anyway, but I had to fight, growing up in the 1950s, 60s America. And both my parents were school teachers. That's why I had to fight a lot, because my dad was like a Second World War combat veteran. He used to discipline the high school boys. And guess who they'd take it out on? But anyway, so I grew up, here I was a football player. I did all this stuff. I went out with a cheerleader, and I was following the path I was expected to follow, which was graduate from high school, go to college, get a degree, hopefully in something that will make you a lot of money. My dad wanted me to be a dentist. Yeah, right. Anyway, and you go to college, get married, settle down, have children, so the parents can have grandchildren, and you extend the family. And then when you're 65 or so, you retired, and like my grandparents did. Well, one set of them went to Europe. They were cool. Gertrude and Archie went to Europe. And that kind of inspired me. In fact, Gertrude was a real big inspiration. And that could be actually the defining moment of my life, now that I think of it. It could be my grandmother. But I'll talk about that later. I'm going to go on my, my plan here. Okay, so, and then the other grandparents just stayed home and gardened and read, watched TV. But they did, everybody retired. That's what you were supposed to do. That's what I was supposed to do. So I went off from my small port town to Seattle and attended the University of Washington. And they're saying, well, you're going to declare a major. So I declared an art major because I was always really good at art. In fact, if you see the little headline of my Freeple of Mirth YouTube channel thing, that's part of one of my paintings of Jethro Tull when I saw that band. So I'm a good painter and I'm a good drawer. And so I went to the University of Washington and majored in art and decided that, well, I'd see how I stacked up against these big city kids. Whoa, like I was really stupid and naive, Okay, so anyway, it's 1967, and I pledge a frat, okay, and I start taking art classes. I do really good in art classes, but the other classes, my, required classes, and stuff, I didn't put much time into those at all. So by the end of a year and 1/4, at the time I was living in a mortuary. It was a good deal. Got an apartment, off the mortuary. It was weird, yeah. We had a great party there once. We keep our beer down in the cooler next to the bodies. But anyway, so things were going weird. It was the late 60s. The Vietnam War was going on. I had friends that had died and everything, Okay, so I was getting sick of college. And I started examining myself from doing artwork, And I remember I did this painting of a guy in a box, and I was sitting there looking at it. Psychoanalyze myself here, check this. Why did I draw a guy in a box? Oh, that's me, I'm in a box, what box am I in, Okay, well, I'm like 20, almost 21 years old. And all I know how to do is really go to school, pump gas, because I pumped gas in high school, play football, But and my drawing, I could draw stuff really good. I go around and draw a fire hydrant. Wow, it really looks like the fire hydrant. Plus, it's got some cool, lines and shapes and composition and stuff. But it's like, when I try and draw to my imagination, I draw like a guy in a box, And I'm like, I need more experiences in life, As an artist, a young artist, I'm like, I need to increase my artistic vocabulary is what something in my brain said. Increase your artistic vocabulary. Well, how do you do that? Well, you travel, you got to travel. So I kept thinking I wanted to travel. I met people who traveled, and some of the rich kids in the frat, like they've gone on summer vacation to like France and stuff, and they're talking about that. And I'm going, yeah, I know about these places. I'd sure like to go. So anyway, and do artwork, have experiences, not just go to the plan, So I decided to quit college, and travel, and that was like the defining moment of my life, pretty much. And the problem is that if I quit college, I'd be drafted and sent to Vietnam to have to kill people for like, Goodyear tires and the chromium mines and stuff, So that's what I learned, In high school, they could, if I wouldn't have gone to college, I could have gone in the Army, everybody else was, I didn't know anything about Vietnam, it's like, I didn't really have any opinion of it. We were trying to stop communism, I guess, but, friends of mine were dying and stuff, and, I was always skeptical about things. Well, anyway, after 2 years of college, and listening to Lyndon Johnson and Nixon, and then I read a poetry book by Ho Chi Minh, so I'm like, wow, if I got in this thing, I'd have to fight for the other side, I think, just based on their leadership. Anyway, I was starting to have my doubts about America, Anyway, so that was pretty much a defining moment to quit the university. Well, my father, who was a World War II veteran, who when I was a kid out fishing with him, he'd always say, don't ever get in a war, son, because he had, pretty bad shell shock or PTSD or whatever you want to call it now, psychological disorders from encountering extremely horrendous, inhumanity to man, blowing people apart and stuff. One day I'll do a thing and tell you stories my dad told me about the freaking war. He was in like Italy. He was in a battle called Punchboard Hill, So he'd always told me don't go to war, but now he'd changed his tune, because, the generation gap was happening and I was not following his plan to go and be a dentist, I was like this weird kid that was an artist, I was too short, he always wanted a tall person, and stuff. So we had these psychological things going on. And I remember we were at Grandma and Grandpa's at Christmas, and here they were. I quit college. But Grandma's for Christmas. We'd been there every Christmas, And the little dog was there in the Christmas tree and all the presents and the sisters and the aunts and the uncles and cousins and stuff. And everybody's hanging around. But I'm in the kitchen and I'm with my dad, World War II veteran, Grandpa Archie. And he really didn't kind of go along with them, but he was there, I think they needed his support. He was World War I veteran. He hadn't seen much combat because he spoke French. He was French-Canadian. So while all the other guys were going over the top in the trenches and getting mowed down by freaking German machine guns, Archie was back in Paris with the generals translating because he spoke French, Anyway, he was sitting there. And then my uncle, Uncle John, he was a Korean War veteran. And then my ancestors are all military, well, my grandmother, because she wanted to get in the DAR, found out that a great ancestor of mine, Colonel Gardner, was a hero of the Battle of Bunker Hill. In fact, he was wounded and died a couple of weeks later, but his son carried things on, and now here I am. So, and I know I got warrior forebears, I'm not very warlike myself, having sort of rejected that sort of thing. Anyway, so I quit college. My dad, they were like drilling me, going, well, you ought to go in the Army. It'd be good for you, teach you some discipline and stuff. I'm like, I don't really want to go in there, and my uncle Johnny is kind of a hothead, he kind of said, well, this is your country. Love it or leave it. I said, well, what's loving it mean? Going in the Army and going killing Asian people, and stuff because they want to have their own country, after, France colonized them and now we've taken over from the French, and we're just ripping them off for all their rubber, Like, did you know that you can kill people over there, but you can't shoot a rubber tree? You get a fine for that. He's like, where's your country? And finally, I just got sick and tired of the whole shittery, and sorry, excuse the language. And I just like walked out the door and hitchhiked back to Port Townsend. Oops, I wasn't supposed to say that, but yeah, I don't care. Anyway, and went to my friend's house and drank a bunch of alcohol and played music and sang songs and stuff. Anyway, after that, my dad talked me into doing a couple more quarters of college because I kind of flunked out of the U. My grade point was really bad in all but art classes. And so I went to a little college nearby called Peninsula College. And I took some art classes. I took a really good philosophy course, though, from Dr. Crost, this German guy. He was great. He knew all about philosophy, and I learned about the pre-Socratics. And I learned one I'll never forget. Thrasymachus always said that all laws are made in the interests of the stronger. Think about it. Don't steal? Who's got the possessions that's worried about it? Yeah, you know. Okay, anyway. Nietzsche's like more, it's like master morality, you know. So then there's slave morality, you know. Oh, I shouldn't steal, I should follow all the rules, kind of. You know, so the two different kinds of morality. Anyway, that's a little aside there. So I really enjoyed the 2 quarters I spent there. But I was resolved, I was quitting. And I got good grades, you know, I got my grades up and stuff. But I was going to quit, you know, and I had to travel. That was just all there was to it. And I was dealing with the draft. Well, this was a defining moment when in dealing with the draft, I had to get some kind of deferment. That means I either had to get married and have a couple children real quick. No, that wasn't in the cards. And or I could kill my brother and my dad and be sole surviving son. That's. I could get a job in a bomb factory. Well, I don't think my slave or master morality would stand for that one, you know. So what am I going to do, you know? Okay, well, hey, I've always had allergies like hay fever and stuff like that. So maybe I could get out on that one. So I knew this doctor. He'd been a doctor for football. He used to tape my ankles and stuff, you know. And he was a really good guy. He was a kind man, you know. And I heard he always had a pocket full of pills at the at the grown-up dances out at the local country club. My mom told me that. Anyway, he said that he would agree to give me an allergy test, you know, where they give you little vaccinations of different essences of things, and that he might, you know, exaggerate the results a little bit for me. So I had it in. So he did that and gave me a little report on it, and I, you know, called the draft board, and they said, well, send the stuff in, you know, because I told them, I said, you know, I quit in college and I need to get reclassified, you know, and I don't want to be 1A. Well, I didn't tell them that, but I said, but I've got some medical issues and I wanted to get you guys aware of them and maybe, you know, something could happen. Okay, so just send it over to the draft board, which is local board number 29, and then the big one was in Seattle. So I wrote a little letter, said, oh, here, I'm quitting college and blah, blah, blah. And I sent that off to him with the test results. And I waited, and that summer I got a couple art scholarships through the Summer School of the Arts, and then I got a job at Safeway as a bag boy on a kind of a swing shift thing. And I got a little apartment overlooking Puget Sound, you know, for what, $47.50 a month. It was really a good deal. And I got an old pickup truck, yeah. And I bought it for $100. I put an ad in the paper, wanted a pickup truck. We'll pay $100. And this Coast Guard guy had one for $100. It was like a 47 Chevy. It ran like a top. It had a little homemade canopy on the back. You know, it was really cool. Anyway, so I got that for $100. I was set up, you know, that summer, and waiting for this return from the draft board. Well, nothing showed up, so I called them again. I said, hey, you know, I sent you this stuff, and they said, oh yeah, well, I can't find it. We'll look for it and we'll call you back. So okay, so went on with my life. Finished up the summer, you know, quit my job at Safeway and got one at the mill, the big pulp mill, you know, where I could make more money. That's a whole adventure itself. I could tell a whole one on working there, the pulp mill and paper mill. Yeah, pulp art. We invented pulp art there. It was pretty cool. Anyway, so I got that job, and the summer school thing ended, and I still hadn't heard back from him. I'm like, okay. So call him up again. Hey, you guys, they said, well, we can't find it. So I prepared another thing from the doctor, got the results that he'd exaggerated, and sent a letter, saying, hey, I'm sending you this again. You probably want to classify me 1Y, because you wouldn't want me out there in the jungle, having a sneezing fit, and getting everybody killed, getting the whole outfit killed. So why don't you just, because I'm planning on leaving the country real soon. So I sent him all this stuff. Sent it again. I still didn't hear anything from him, okay? And so I'm like, well, I've tried, So as November and December came along, there were a whole bunch of people in town. They were all going to go with me because I was heading to Europe, And I'd got my pack, and a pair of hiking shoes, lightweight kind of. Back then they were called rock climbing shoes, but they're actually just small, lightweight hiking shoes. Back then you didn't have real rock climbing shoes like you do now. So it was good. And I had a leather jacket, and my mom sewed a pocket in it that deep, So those pickpockets overseas, you got to watch out over there because it's not America. It's safe America, Like I was safer walking around over there than I would be in Chicago or something. But anyway, she sold this in for my passport and stuff, and I got my passport. I was all ready to go, and actually just one guy in town decided he'd go with me, and his old friend, Well, everybody was friends in our little town here. And he found an athletic club you could get really cheap tickets to London. And I was getting a one-way ticket because I thought, this draft thing, I'm taking off, I might not want to come back. I might be in trouble. And I'd rather, and I knew people that had moved out of the country to avoid the draft. One guy went to Sweden, got married to a Swedish gal. He's still there, like 50 years later. This is all taking place 50 years ago, okay? He's been there forever, and he's married and speaks Swedish now. And other people I knew were going to Canada, real draft dodgers, I guess that's what I felt, I guess I was because I hadn't heard from him. And sure enough, I got a letter from him. Yeah. After I'd already got my plane ticket with this friend of mine through this athletic club. We joined for $1. We got like a ticket to London. And I think it was like $100 or something like that. The best one was Icelandic, and it was like something like, I remember, like $79 from wherever in the States to London. I mean, airfare was pretty good back then. Anyway, we got this plane ticket. Sure enough, in December, I get a letter from local board number 29, the draft board. Yeah, well, I always said, greetings and stuff on it, but it basically said, I'm paraphrasing it, we have been informed that you no longer are attending University of Washington. Like I told them that like 3 or 4 times. And we have to reclassify you. Please mark one of the following. And they had little check mark boxes. And one said, married with 2 children, sole surviving son, attending college or university, working in defense, playing all flat feet or whatever. All the deferments, and I'm like, holy cow, what am I going to do now, Here I've got my plane ticket for the 26th of January coming up. And I remember it was Christmas of 1969. I was on my way. And it's like, and they sent me this thing, Oh, man. So I turned the thing, I didn't even check any boxes. I just turned it over and I wrote him a letter. I said, look, you guys want me to put my life in your hands. And all these things that you're asking me on the other side, I have already told you multiple times. If you look around your office, you might find a little package that has my allergy test results in it and a little letter from me. And you might find one or the other of them or both because I sent you 2 of them, So I'm like, ugh. And you want me to put my life in your hands? You can't even keep this straight. Holy cow, In fact, I said, if this if I fought in this freaking war, I'd probably want to fight for the other side, you know, because they're just people trying to liberate their own country, which it turned out I was right. I was totally right. In fact, my dad later apologized to me. He goes, you were right about that Vietnam thing, about, 30 years later or something, just before he died, But we were right, all us protesters and stuff. Well, I wasn't really much of a protester. I just, like had to deal with it. I wasn't out there. In fact, some of the protest stuff, I was kind of like, oh, anyway. So I wrote him this letter, and I just sent it off to him, and I proceeded with my plans. And when I left the country on January 26th, and that's a whole story in itself, the flight over there, which I tell you later. The next day, my mom, informed me later, much later, that I received a 1A classification in the mail. And 1A means you're going to get drafted. You're going to be forced into the military, forced to cut all your hair off and salute these jerks, and learn how to kill people and go over there and kill those gooks. That's what they call them. The dehumanizing factor, every war, they make up dehumanizing words, And you probably know a few of them that are popular in this day and age, but they're always there through all the ages, as long as we have war. And they haven't always been everywhere, too, because I learned in history, there's been peaceful cultures, and humans are capable of a peaceful culture. But right now, we're being ruled by a bunch of people who make a lot of money on war. Yeah, war. And it happened to, the top guys happen to be very big bankers that own shares in all the central banks in the West. Anyway, there you go. That's who's causing all the problems. Everybody knows their names, but everyone's so whacked out that they don't even go up and take these guys and shut them down, or seize their thing. Nobody can come up with a freaking decent form of government, I guess. Or it's just anybody who thinks of it, they just kill them anyway, because that's what is ruling the world, is organized crime. Just, guy pops up, it's like whack-a-mole. Kennedy pops up, hey, let's have a détente with Russia and stop the Cold War, cut back the military, and stop Israel's quest to get a nuclear weapon, which had just come in. Read the Samson option by Seymour Hersh. Boom, whack-a-mole, he's gone, Bobby Kennedy comes up, whack, Martin Luther King, he's got off the race thing, started opposing the Vietnam War and militarism, exactly 1 year after his not most famous speech, but second most famous speech, where he goes after Vietnam, exactly a year to the day. That's when they killed him. And if you look at the King's official website, Coretta Scott King and the children of Martin Luther King, there was actually a trial with witnesses and everything. They did it, I think it was Memphis, Tennessee. And they got the transcripts right there. You got to read it. They have proved that the U.S. government, FBI, CIA, CIA runs the country, but somebody runs the CIA. They're the ones that killed him. But nobody's been brought, officially, of course, because the government and academia and all the media lies, okay? And this is something I've discovered in my life, cruising along. Anyway, back to my story. I kind of got off on that one. Back to my story. So the way I found out about this 1A thing that they draft me, which that's what got me off on this tangent. Anyway, I had gotten over to London and traveled south because it was winter, I wanted to go to some warm climates. Got down to Spain, had some fun. That's another story there, Spain, and getting kicked out of the cave. We were living in a cave. We got Guardia Civil, look out, those guys are crazy. Anyway, went down to Morocco, and on the way there, I'd written a letter to my mom saying, my mail, if you want to send me some mail, send it to Americans in care of Rod Freeman, in care of American Express, Marrakesh, Morocco, because that's how you get your mail over there. If you're just a bum on the road, you don't know where you're going to stay, just have it sent to the American Express. I don't know if they still do this, but it was a tremendous service when we were traveling around, and I'm sure they probably still do. Anyway, so when I got to Marrakesh, I went into the American Express and I got 2 letters. One was from my mom, and I opened that one up. I don't know if I did open that one because the other one was from the Selective Service, local board number 29. So I might have opened that one first. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But my mom's letter said, oh, right after you left, you got that 1A, and so I wrote him back that I'd send him your address as soon as I got it. So I sent him the Marrakesh address. So, that explains how they knew I was here, okay? And so I opened that up, and that had the famous greetings. You are hereby summoned to appear at blah, 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 Seattle, for your physical examination for induction into the United States Army. Shit. So I'm like, okay, let's see. When do they want me to, what was it, March 21st? Let's see, it's March 19th. Don't think I'm going to make it. So I turned that one over and wrote a letter to the draft board again. I said, well, gee, you caught me over here, you should look for my records. I mentioned the records again. And I don't have any money now. I lied. But I'm going to Istanbul because I just talked to this guy who come from India. I wanted to hitchhike to India. I thought, next stop, Istanbul, American Express. But I kind of lied to him. I maybe got a job in Istanbul, and so maybe I can come back later. But sorry, I can't make this one. That's in 2 or 3 days. And so I sent that to them, and then sent a letter to my mom, and proceeded to hitchhike on. Anyway, that was the defining moment of my life, dealing with that. And the draft thing, I'll get to that later. That's a whole story in itself, and what happened, later on that one. And I'll tell you some of the adventures. But a lot of these adventures were the time, the 2.5 years approximately, that I spent being a world-traveling delegate of peace and love and freedom from the United States to the rest of the world. From January 26, 1970 until May 29th or so, I think it was, 1972, when I came back and ended up on a hippie commune, which is another bunch of stories. So anyway, stay tuned for my next installment, if this one has the right optics and I can unload it on you. So till then, sayonara, ciao, skål, and goodbye. From Freeple of Mirth, you people of mirthful earth.